Jordan didn't look up from his notes, but the words echoed in his mind. This wasn't just about a case. This was about legacy. It was about showing his mother that her sacrifices had not been in vain. The courtroom, a battlefield of words and wits. The next day, as Jordan walked into the courtroom, he wasn't just facing a legal battle. He was facing a battle for his family's future. His oversized blazer still hung awkwardly on his slim frame, but his gaze was unwavering. He was ready. He had spent hours memorizing legal definitions, preparing rebuttals, and rehearsing arguments. Now it was time to put it all to the test. As Jordan stood in front of the judge, his heart pounded in his chest. He knew this was the moment of truth, the moment where everything he had worked for would either pay off or crumble in front of him. His mother, sitting quietly in the gallery, was his strength. But Jordan couldn't afford to look at her. He had to focus. He had to fight for them. "Your Honor," Jordan began, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling in his stomach. "I'm here to prove that the eviction notice issued to my mother was fraudulent and unlawful." His voice carried through the room, demanding attention. He wasn't just speaking for himself. He was speaking for his mother, for every family who had ever been pushed to the brink by an unjust system. Jordan's arguments, his calm demeanor, and his knowledge of the law were shocking to everyone in the room, especially to the opposing lawyer, Franklin Moore. The seasoned attorney had expected to walk all over the young man. He hadn't expected Jordan's resolve. Moore, with his polished suit and years of experience, tried to belittle Jordan, making snide remarks about the teenager's lack of legal background. But Jordan wasn't swayed. He didn't flinch. He simply continued, proving his point with precision and confidence. In fact, the more Moore tried to discredit him, the more Jordan's words rang true. The evidence Jordan presented was irrefutable, and it wasn't just about the law. It was about something more profound: the integrity to stand up for what was right no matter the odds. The turning point: Jordan's unlikely discovery. Jordan's breakthrough came when he examined the eviction notice closely and noticed something that had eluded everyone else. The notary's signature at the bottom was fraudulent. The notary had retired years before the notice had been issued. It was a critical flaw, and Jordan knew that if he could prove it, the entire eviction case would crumble. His heart raced as he dug into his research, pulling up records and laws, all while his mother remained in the background, offering silent support. For Jordan, this wasn't just about winning a case. It was about finding truth in a broken system. He wasn't going to allow this injustice to happen to his family, or to anyone else who might be caught in the same trap. The night Jordan discovered the fraud, his determination intensified. He felt an adrenaline surge that pushed him forward. This was the key. But he knew it wouldn't be enough on its own. He needed to build a case that was airtight, so when he stood in front of the judge again, he would have more than just hope. He would have irrefutable proof. As he prepared, his mother sat quietly, her eyes filled with pride and fear. She was proud of her son for fighting, but the stakes were high. And yet, as she watched him prepare, there was something in her eyes, a glimmer of hope that had been absent for too long. The courtroom showdown. When Jordan returned to the courtroom, the tension in the air was palpable. Judge Reynolds, who had once looked at Jordan with skepticism, now saw him differently. Jordan had earned his respect. And as the case continued, it became clear that Jordan's preparation and understanding of the law far exceeded what anyone had expected. His arguments were clear, precise, and backed by evidence. He wasn't just fighting for his family. He was fighting for justice. The moment the fraudulent notary signature was revealed, the courtroom shifted. Judge Reynolds leaned forward, his earlier skepticism replaced with a newfound respect. Even more, the opposing lawyer could feel the ground shifting beneath him. When Jordan made the final point, that the entire eviction process was invalid due to the fraudulent notice, the room fell silent. Judge Reynolds, for the first time, seemed truly uncertain. The tide had turned, and it was no longer just about a teenager defending his mother. It was about the truth winning, the verdict and the unexpected outcome, the quiet before the storm. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the final moments of Jordan's case approached. Every word he had spoken, every document he had presented, Every piece of evidence had led him to this crucial juncture. He had withstood the harsh critiques, the dismissive sneers, and the underlying disbelief. But Jordan wasn't fighting for approval. He was fighting for truth, for justice, and for his family's dignity. As Jordan stood at the defense table, his binder open before him, the weight of the entire room's expectation pressed down on him. The gallery had shifted from mocking to intrigued, then to respectful silence. And now, with the gavel poised above Judge Reynolds's desk, it seemed the world had paused. Would the law stand with Jordan, or would it be just another disappointment, another confirmation that the system was rigged against the little guy? The gavel falls, a shocking twist. After a tense silence, Judge Reynolds adjusted his glasses and tapped the gavel twice, bringing the courtroom to a sudden hush. Everyone was waiting for him to speak, but his eyes lingered on Jordan a moment longer. He had seen this teenager's transformation, from the scared, underdog youth who had walked into this courtroom unsure of his place to the calm, confident defender who had just dismantled the case against him with sheer intellect and unwavering belief in the law. Jordan's heart raced as the judge leaned forward, his voice steady and firm. "Mr. Carter," he began, "the evidence you have presented is compelling. In fact, it is beyond impressive for someone so young. I had my doubts when you walked into this courtroom, but you have earned my respect today." The room seemed to inhale collectively, and Jordan's breath hitched as the realization set in. Judge Reynolds's next words would change everything. "I will rule in your favor," the judge continued. "The eviction notice is invalid due to the fraudulent notary signature. I am ordering that the Carter family be compensated for wrongful eviction and emotional distress." A ripple of disbelief washed over the courtroom, followed by a quiet, building wave of murmurs. Some spectators had been so sure that this young man wouldn't stand a chance. But now they were witnesses to something extraordinary. A teenager, without any formal legal training, had just won a legal battle against seasoned professionals and a notoriously tough judge. The underdog had triumphed. As Jordan stood there, his legs suddenly felt weak, and a flood of emotions washed over him. Relief, joy, vindication. But, above all, he felt the overwhelming weight of responsibility. He had not just done this for himself or for his mother. He had done it for everyone who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or written off. He had shown them that everyone deserves a chance to be heard, regardless of their background or the challenges they face. A family reunited. As the gavel came down, Jordan turned toward his mother, who had been sitting in the gallery, tears silently streaming down her face. Angela, his rock, his constant support, had witnessed her son's transformation firsthand. For years, she had carried the weight of their struggles alone. But today, it wasn't just Jordan who had triumphed. It was them together. She rose from her seat and made her way down the aisle, her eyes filled with pride and disbelief. When she reached him, the mother and son embraced tightly, the courtroom's formality melting away in the warmth of that moment. Angela whispered, "You did it, Jordan. You really did it." Jordan's voice was steady, but full of emotion. "We did it, Mom. We didn't give up." The words, simple as they were, held a world of meaning between them. They had fought together. They had beaten the odds. The unexpected apology, a judge's change of heart. After the ruling, as the crowd began to slowly dissipate, Judge Reynolds called Jordan and Angela to the side. His usual stern demeanor had softened, and a look of humility crossed his face. "Mr. Carter," he began, "I owe you an apology. When you first entered my courtroom, I had my doubts. But you've proven something to me today, that the law is more than just words on paper. It's about truth, integrity, and courage. I now understand that no matter someone's age or background, if they have the heart and mind to fight for what's right, they deserve respect." Angela placed a hand over her heart, her voice trembling slightly as she responded, "Thank you, Your Honor, for seeing him, for seeing us." Judge Reynolds smiled faintly and placed a hand on Jordan's shoulder. "You've got a rare gift, son. If you're serious about pursuing law, I would be honored to mentor you. The field could use more people like you." For the first time, the judge's voice held warmth, and his respect for the teenager was evident. Jordan nodded silently, his heart filled with gratitude. This moment, this recognition from the very person who had initially doubted him, meant more than any victory in court. It was a reminder that courage and truth could change even the most entrenched perspectives. The aftermath, a new beginning. As Jordan and Angela walked out of the courthouse, hand in hand, they were met with the warm glow of the sun, now a beacon of hope after the long, dark struggle. The weight that had been pressing down on them for so long had lifted. For the first time in years, their future seemed full of possibilities. Jordan paused at the top of the courthouse steps, looking out at the horizon. "One day I'll come back here," he murmured. "Not as a defendant but as a lawyer." Angela smiled, a soft, knowing smile that was full of pride and quiet certainty. "I know you will, Jordan. You can do anything." As they walked home, the house that had once seemed like a place of struggle now felt like a sanctuary, a home they had fought for. Jordan's journey had only just begun, and he knew, deep down, that this was just the first chapter in what would be an extraordinary life. The ripple effect. News of Jordan's victory spread quickly throughout the neighborhood and even to local media. People who had once viewed him with skepticism began to see him for what he truly was. A young man with a heart full of courage and a mind sharp enough to challenge even the most seasoned lawyers. His victory didn't just change his life, it inspired others. It became a symbol of resilience, of the power of truth, and of the potential of every underdog. Jordan's victory wasn't just about him or his mother. It was about standing up to injustice, about demanding fairness, and about making sure that every voice is heard, no matter how small or overlooked. His story was a reminder that one person's fight for what's right can spark a chain reaction that leads to change. Epilogue: a legacy of justice. As Jordan continued his studies, he carried the lessons of that courtroom with him. The judge's words, the respect he had earned, and the impact his victory had on others all fueled his desire to become a lawyer, not just for his family but for anyone who needed someone to stand up for them. And so, Jordan Carter's journey continued. His story became a testament to the power of education, the strength of perseverance, and the importance of never giving up. From a teenager with no legal training to a hero in his own right, Jordan proved that no matter where you come from, your voice matters. You have the power to change the world, one fight at a time. The battle for justice, a teenager who outsmarted the system. A cold courtroom and an even colder judge. The courtroom was tense, the air heavy with anticipation. The polished wood floors gleamed under the fluorescent lights that hung above, casting sharp, cold shadows across the room. Every seat was occupied, every eye fixed on the proceedings that would soon unfold. In this world of cold legal jargon and calculated precision, one young man would step into the battle of his life, not with years of experience, but with something far more valuable: the unwavering determination to protect his family. Jordan Carter, a 17-year-old high school student, wasn't your typical courtroom figure. At first glance, he seemed out of place. His oversized blazer, his nervous stance, and his worn briefcase didn't scream attorney. But there he was, walking up to the defense table, the weight of the entire room's gaze on him. What Jordan lacked in formal legal training, he made up for in heart, and that heart would soon make all the difference. But before the courtroom drama could truly begin, a voice rang out from the judge's bench. Judge Reynolds, a figure as intimidating as the courtroom itself, looked down at the young teen with a smirk. His reputation for harsh rulings and condescending remarks made it clear that Jordan would have an uphill battle. "Are you sure you're not lost on your way to basketball practice?" The room erupted in laughter. It was a remark designed to humiliate, a reminder of the assumptions people made about Jordan before he even spoke. In a society where judgments are often formed before a person can prove themselves, Jordan was already fighting an uphill battle, one that had nothing to do with the law, but everything to do with race, age, and expectations. Yet Jordan didn't flinch. "No, Your Honor," he replied, his voice steady despite the ridicule. "I'm here to defend my mother." The courtroom fell silent. It wasn't just a bold statement. It was the start of a journey that would defy everyone's expectations. The unexpected underestimate. From the moment Jordan entered the courtroom, he was met with nothing but doubt. To the judge, the lawyers, and even the spectators, he was just a teenager with no legal experience, no professional background, and no reason to believe he had any business in such a formal setting. Yet Jordan understood something they didn't. The law is for everyone. His mother, Angela Carter, was at the center of this case, and Jordan had witnessed too many injustices to sit idly by. He couldn't afford to back down now. Jordan's mother had raised him alone in a tough, run-down neighborhood. They had faced their share of hardships, but Angela, a cleaner by trade, had always tried to give her son a better life. She worked tirelessly, holding down multiple jobs just to keep their heads above water. But despite her efforts, the world always seemed to find a way to knock her down. And now, in the most cruel twist of fate, the family was being evicted from their home. An eviction notice was slipped under their door, one that didn't seem quite right. Angela was certain that something was wrong. Something unjust was happening. But she didn't have the resources to fight. The system wasn't built for people like them. She had no money for a lawyer and no energy left to fight. For Jordan, this wasn't just about the house. It was about everything his mother had done for him. It was about the sacrifices she had made and the love she had given. Jordan had always been told that education was his way out. But now, education was his way to save his family. When Jordan saw his mother's heartache, the defeat in her eyes, something inside of him snapped. He wasn't going to let them take everything from her. He didn't know the law, but he knew enough to start. And that's exactly what he did. He dove headfirst into legal books, learning everything he could about tenant rights and eviction laws. At night, after his mom had gone to bed, Jordan stayed up, poring over pages and pages of legalese. What if I could represent her? He thought. What if I could fight back? The power of determination. Jordan's journey to this courtroom wasn't just about his love for his mother. It was about resilience. The world had taught him that people like him didn't win. People like his mother didn't get to keep their homes. They were easily forgotten, ignored, and dismissed. But Jordan was determined not to let that happen. For weeks, he studied, practicing his arguments in front of the mirror, preparing himself for what would be the greatest challenge of his life. The night before the trial, Jordan was exhausted. His mother, now fully aware of his resolve, quietly placed a plate of food in front of him. But Jordan didn't touch it. He was too focused, too determined. He had to get this right. He couldn't afford to fail. The courtroom clash. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. Jordan stood tall despite his oversized suit. His legs were shaking, but his resolve was unwavering. His mother, sitting quietly in the gallery, was his rock, his silent supporter. But today, Jordan had to prove himself to more than just his mom. He had to prove himself to the system that had always written off people like him. And then came the moment Jordan would never forget. Judge Reynolds, the very man who had mocked him moments earlier, raised his eyebrows as Jordan stepped up to make his case. It was time to face the system head-on. It was time for Jordan to show everyone that justice had a way of working in his favor, even if they didn't believe it. As Jordan presented his evidence piece by piece, he saw the skepticism begin to fade. His calm demeanor, his unwavering certainty, his ability to quote legal precedents. He was no longer the teenager who didn't belong. He was a force to be reckoned with, and soon, the judge, the lawyer, and the gallery all began to see him for who he truly was. A young man who had learned the law to protect his family. The unexpected turn. But Jordan wasn't the only one who would be surprised. Franklin Moore, the opposing lawyer, tried to discredit him with the same arrogance that had characterized his earlier mockery. But Jordan didn't back down. With every word, every argument, he laid out his case with clarity and confidence. And when he unveiled the critical piece of evidence, the fraudulent notary signature, it was a game-changer. Jordan's ability to prove that the eviction notice was invalid shifted the balance of the courtroom. What had once been a foregone conclusion now hung in the balance. As the courtroom sat in stunned silence, the judge's demeanor shifted. He no longer looked at Jordan as a mere teenager. He saw a fighter, a scholar, and a young man of integrity. The tension in the room was palpable as Judge Reynolds deliberated. For the first time, the courtroom was no longer a place of cold justice. It was a place where truth mattered, where resilience had found a way. The emotional struggle, Jordan's fight for justice. The dark night of the soul. Jordan's journey to this courtroom wasn't just about presenting legal arguments or proving his case. It was about facing his deepest fears, the ones that kept him awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he could really make a difference. He was just a teenager, not a lawyer, not someone with power or influence. But he had something that far exceeded any of those things. Passion, determination, and a burning need to protect his family. As the trial approached, Jordan had moments of doubt. He was overwhelmed with the idea of challenging not just the law, but an entire system that had been stacked against him and his mother for years. The landlord's lawyer, Franklin Moore, was a seasoned professional, and Judge Reynolds had a reputation for being unrelenting, for expecting perfection. But none of this mattered to Jordan. His heart, his sense of justice were what propelled him forward. Yet, the more Jordan researched, the more he learned, the heavier the burden became. Each night, the kitchen table became a battleground, a place where law books and printouts piled up, and the soft glow of the kitchen light became his only companion. His mother, Angela, watched from the doorway. There were times when Jordan's exhaustion became unbearable, when his shoulders slumped and his eyes grew heavy. He had always been her strength. But now she was his rock, offering silent support. She knew the odds were against them, but she also knew her son better than anyone. She knew he wouldn't give up. One evening, after yet another exhausting study session, Angela placed a warm plate of food in front of Jordan. It wasn't just a meal. It was a symbol of everything she had done for him. She had always given him what little she could, and now it was his turn to return the favor. With a small smile, she looked at him and whispered, "You've already done more than I ever thought possible."